And welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
And hang on, let me just check some things. Still inside, yes. Haven't seen the sun in several days, check. Don't remember what people look like anymore, check. I think we're still in quarantine.
We're still, if the rats nesting within my beard are any indication, we're still in quarantine.
Which means it's more quarantine classics. This month will continue to be our quarantine classic month, and we're going to continue to check off movies that one or both of us have not seen and probably should have seen at some point.
Oh, did I check off a marvelous movie? Chekhov's gun has fired right into my heart for Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Still maybe the greatest film title of all time, if nothing else.
Honestly, it's probably rivaling for one of the greatest films of all time as well, if you want to get right down to it.
I'm just gonna say it. This might be a perfect movie.
It genuinely might be a perfect movie. I absolutely adore this movie. Well, we'll talk about my experience with the movie in a minute here. But Jackson, you said this is your first time watching it, correct?
Yes. I had not any Kubrick that I had seen prior was stuff that we have done for the show. So I had not seen any Kubrick prior to Beating a Dead Horse. That was an era where I was a blind, unenlightened, plebeian wandering the wastes in search of my one true auteur god, and I found him, and his name is Stanley Kubrick.
This is one area where you and I can agree upon, I think, because we have a lot of very wildly different tastes in a lot of places, but Kubrick is kind of a wildly different guy.
Kubrick is also, I think he's like the nexus of where the perfect intersection of what we tend to respond to. Because, you tend to respond to a lot of the weirder, bold and brash, kind of stuff. And Kubrick's definitely got that. He is a capital A auteur for sure. But he also, in his madness, he manages to, focus it into these kind of grand, really tight, I'd say, resonant narratives that, I tend to respond to more than a lot of, aesthetic or filmmaking elements. And so he's the complete package, is what I'm trying to say here.
He is slowly becoming the mascot of Beating a Dead Horse. We salute thee, Mr. Kubrick.
We're gonna take Mr. Kubrick and we're gonna dig up his body and we're gonna put his head on a horse and he'll be our new mascot. Because we're literally beating a dead horse.
I genuinely do not know where to go with that. I was trying to pause. The idea of comedy is to yes and. To say yes and then take it to the next area. Or no, but. There is nothing to be done with what you just said.
Nothing to be done but put me in jail.
That was poison. That was podcast poison. Oh, Christ. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to put this, because the truth of the matter is that I watched this movie twice for this podcast. I watched it twice in the same day because I watched it once, said this fucking rules, and then watched it again a couple hours later because I just wanted to relive it. But I had seen it once before. I had watched it back freshman year of college. There were parts of it I remembered. I remembered liking it back then. I'm happy that my dumb freshman of college brain did not lead me astray, and I had still really enjoyed it, and I wasn't just thinking it was great because I was an idiot, and in fact thought it was absolutely wonderful, indeed perhaps the perfect film. Yeah, so I watched it twice within the same day, and my appreciation for it grew even within the span of the 3 hours in between my first watching and my second watching.
There is a lot. This is definitely a movie that would reward a second watch, I imagine. I did not, as per usual, because I am a lazy hack fraud. But there's just a lot going on in this in terms of everything, really. It's just a lot.
So, I mean, here's the problem with this movie, is that I know Jackson and I are both really boiling over with things to talk about. What can we say pre-spoiler? I mean, the obvious answer is the thing that we have said for the past 3 movies, and something that we are slowly learning to understand is what makes classic movies classics, which is, unsurprisingly, this is very applicable to today still, despite the fact that it is ostensibly about the Cold War.
Well, it's interesting in that I think that classics, a lot of highly regarded movies, I think that they tend to take one of two routes. I think that, like, they can have the applicability, and I think this is a weird example of both, and that, like, I would describe this as the perfect Cold War movie, but within that, it was also sort of weird because when I said that we were watching this, my mom was like, "Oh, how appropriate," and I'm like, the nuke movie about a pandemic, and she's like, "Well, I mean, it's just, about, like, disasters and the end of the world and stuff." I'm like, "All right, seems tenuous to me," but, like, I mean, I was kind of shuddering, realizing that we do have a character with less depth and subtlety than a Doctor Strangelove character in office right now. More than one, in fact. So, like, just on a general level, it, of course, is still applicable. But I also feel like there are a lot of movies, and we might see this next week, that are just so emblematic of the time, that, like, they kind of stand as, like, a time capsule or a period piece. Which, with this movie, I think it's kind of the best of both worlds, and this movie really manages to do both. And, like, I think arguably, like, Kane was a little more timeless feeling. Like, there were specific things about, like, the political moment, but, like, the rise and fall of, like, the hashtag great men of history, that's as old as Shakespeare. Casablanca, I think, was a little more like this, a little more, both, like, really rooted in its period while also still having a lot of resonance for today. But I think this even more so, if only because, like, possibly because the iconography of the movie has sort of entered our dialogue, like, particularly I forgot that the image of, like, the guy in the cowboy hat riding the bomb, that comes from this movie.
There's a couple things that come from this movie. The one that I also remembered is the gif of the dude chewing gum and, like, sitting behind the big board. Is also something that's used fairly frequently on Twitter. There's a couple of iconic scenes from this movie, though they're a lot less immediately recognizable, like, as opposed to the Kane gifs and whatnot.
Yeah. And so, like, I think that this, I think what we might be seeing is that as a result of being, like, so of its time, like, so, like, laser focused on, like, the issues contemporary to it, I think that it gets at something, it does end up speaking to a broader truth regardless of time period. And I think that's what the really, really great classics tend to do, as opposed to just being a time capsule.
I think the other thing to kind of keep in mind with this as well is that the iconography of the Cold War has become so ingrained within pop culture. I'm looking specifically at, like, Fallout and other kind of retrofuturism things.
Yeah.
Where, like, it feels instantly recognizable, which I think might help lend itself to that timeless feeling of it. Because these things that feel so rooted in the time that the film was made. This was made in 1964. I don't know exactly when it's set. It's kind of up in the air-ish. But
we can assume roughly contemporary with when it's made, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But, like, everything about that film is so in it of its time period or around that same time, but it feels so very current because we're so used to that retrofuturistic aesthetic. It has kind of a BioShock vibe to it, a Fallout vibe to it. There's a lot of elements of it that have just been taken and repurposed in our own modern pop culture that it feels instantly familiar.
I mean, speaking of stuff repurposed for modern pop culture, Metal Gear fans, I'm not going to spoil it in this movie because it's a great bit. This is where the liquid arm comes from. You'll know it when you see it.
Coincidentally, if you're looking for the rest of the Metal Gear lore, it's basic. If you want to break it down, because I watched Metal Gear Solid in 2 movies this weekend. If you're looking to fill in your Metal Gear, the origins of Metal Gear, Dr. Strangelove and Escape from New York, and you've just played Metal Gear in 3 hours as opposed to the multi-saga that...
But you should experience the saga. You should do it.
Anyway. I agree, actually. I rather like Metal Gear Solid, so I know I'm not usually the one to talk about it. I just felt like it was worth agreeing with Jackson on.
But yeah, I think the other thing, in addition to kind of how omnipresent the iconography is, I think that, oh shit, oh no. Now I got distracted by Solid Snake. It happened again.
God damn it, every fucking time.
Every time. So wait, you were mentioning the iconography. Oh, okay, got it, Coach. In addition to the fact that, like, the iconography of this movie and the iconography of the era has just become such a, like, present thing, both, like, pop culturally and just culturally as well. Like, we're still feeling the effects of the Cold War. I mean, like, anyone older than us, basically, like, remembers some aspects of it, like, growing up under the threat of, like, mutually assured destruction, which is not a thing that we really worry about anymore, although we still should. But I think the other thing that makes this movie feel so fresh is how bold it is, like, especially for the time, but even now, like, the movie, the first thing that I noted about this movie was the title card. I'm assuming that they had to have played this in theaters just so, like, government officials wouldn't get upset.
Oh my god, I love that title card so much.
It's really good. But it also just goes to show you that, like, there is no other movie. Like, it's more common now to, like, be able to rag on the government, but, like, especially during the Cold War era, to imply that, like, America was anything other but, like, the last, like, stalwart defense against the Reds, like, and implying that we're kind of a bunch of bumbling idiots, like, threatening the world with our own, like, masculine hubris.
I mean, if you don't know what he's talking about, if you haven't seen the movie, the title card goes beyond just the usual, like, all events portrayed are fiction, all characters are living or dead, blah, 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 but to include the fact that the United States government will actively prevent any of the things happening in this movie from happening.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because after watching the movie, I was thinking about that title card and I'm like, would they though?
Honestly, it feels like a joke in and of itself, which is incredible.
No, and I think it just speaks to how how much of, like, a firebrand movie this kind of was, and how, like, I mean, I mean,
brilliant, to be frank. If the fact that I don't know whether this was mandated or not to put it in front, but the fact that Kubrick could be mandated to put this in front and for it to feel so natural and as like part of the commentary is just chef's kiss.
It is chef's kiss, and I don't want to make too many grand sweeping statements because I know this would have been, like, the counterculture era, so this might not have been as uncommon a sentiment amongst, like, the people, but I feel like amongst the, like, Hollywood structure, I feel like this is still pretty bold. I mean, I know we're starting to get into, like, new Hollywood and stuff here, but we're coming pretty, if not, like, at the tail end of it, like, hot off the heels of, like, the fucking Hays Code and shit. Like, I don't know. This feels pretty groundbreaking to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking a lot about the Hays Code and, like, where, like, it felt kind of intermingling, because, like, you can kind of feel little bits of that purity still purity in air quotes underlying it. Like, it's very interesting to watch with the knowledge of the Hays Code.
Yeah, because I know that towards the end of its lifespan, like, it took a long time for the Hays Code to be officially retired, but, like, it was unofficially retired way before that. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, it was still if this movie still had to make some concessions, like every now and then, because I was looking for those places too. You're right.
Yeah, it's absolutely like just this movie is. We said perfect, and I think that there is just layers upon layers of how it is perfect, and that it feels like it's both a perfect commentary of the world and everything going on, but also a perfect encapsulation of the times and a perfect encapsulation of cinema as a whole throughout it. And just the movie is good, is really what it boils down to. And like, I am so excited to dive into the thematics of what makes it good. Like, this is, I'm usually the type of person that talks about like the camera work and how like it was groundbreaking, especially in these classic movies, and like what the tricks they used and whatnot. And like, it feels very Kubrickian in a lot of ways. A lot of kind of long shots, a lot of intimate shots, but a lot of kind of like just slow shots, but also still feeling very intimate in a lot of ways. That's worth mentioning. If you haven't seen this movie, it is ostensibly a comedy. Honestly, there are a lot of things about it that like it's a very serious movie, but it's very funny.
This movie is fucking hilarious, and I think more than anything just shows what range that absolute madman Kubrick had, that he could make like of the previous three movies that I've seen, like this, The Shining, and 2001. Like 2001 was like a, space brain, galaxy brain, like, drug trip from the beginning of time. And then you had like pure psychological terror with The Shining, and this is just straight up fucking hilarious. Like when I saw that it was like a war comedy, I expected it to be very deadpan, which it is. I mean, it is that, because that seemed like the only type of comedy I could imagine Kubrick doing. But it's also just like very silly in a really fun way, and all the humor totally works. It's still really, really funny.
It's kind of in a way like verbal slapstick, if that makes sense, because like
that's a good way to put it.
It's not it's not actual slapstick. That doesn't, well, actually there is one slapstick in it that I would not be surprised was an accident and just recovered from very nicely, but like there is a lot of actual, like, just, it's so overblown despite its subtlety to it. Like that's what I mean by kind of verbal slapstick to it.
It really, really skirts that line perfectly of like being just over the top enough, but not so over the top that like the satire becomes unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think it's also like it's easier to accept the satire is realistic now that the curtain's been drawn back a little bit with Sir President Daddy Trump revealing what an actual buffoon everyone involved is, with him most of all. But yeah, like it's still, I think even for the time, like this would not have been too terribly hard to believe.
Well, I mean, in defense of Dr. Strangelove, the truth of the matter is that the president is still represented fairly well. Like, like, I don't think that even Kubrick would be like, no, the Thurgeton is the president. Like, that's the thing, is like, if you want to parallel General Thurgeton or Thurgeton, something along those lines, I'm butchering the name, I guarantee it, is very much a parallel to Trump. Like, there's just lines where he's like, yes, we are the greatest of all time, and blah, 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 and just boisterously professing nothing, absolutely nonsense. And the president is still very rational and very trying to get things to go well. There's commentary with the president as well that I am so excited to talk about, but like, I don't think Kubrick was expecting this.
The roles were a little reversed here. It made more sense to assume that like the president would have some like gravitas, some majesty, whereas like you have a bunch of trigger happy generals like breathing down his neck and telling him to bomb the Ruskies. Who could have known it would be the other way around? But yeah, I think that while we're talking about like the rah-rah of Thurgeton, he is great. Also, another element that like really skirts the line of just over the top enough is his performance and like his voice.
Genuinely might be my favorite performance of an actor. Like, everything he does is absolutely perfect. Just the small muscle movements in his face just to show emotion is wonderful. They are like just over the top enough, but like also subtle enough that you might miss them. Oh, it's his fucking performance is transcendent.
No, it's magnificent. And I also really love whoever's playing Ripper, the other general, and I just love how many close-ups we get of him chomping on his fucking cigar.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god.
All right, are we ready to talk themes? Can we start talking about these trigger happy horny kids? Because I am so fucking ready. I have just my goddamn machine gun is loaded with examples. I am ready to pull that trigger to put our base on red alert and start Wing Attack Plan R.
I mean, Sean, take me out to dinner first.
Oh fuck, I'm so excited about this movie. Let's go. But before we do, I have to calm myself for a minute here. I have to submit my codes first, make sure everybody knows what we're doing here. Pull my cowboy hat out and say, hey, if you're enjoying the podcast, you should leave us a review on iTunes. You should tell your friends. You should follow us on Twitter at BADH_cast. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/BADHcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about fucking Easy Rider, right?
Easy Rider. Yep, that's my pick for film to revisit. It's interesting because when I watched this, spoiler alert, I did not much care for this movie when I first saw it, but I've been thinking about it a lot in the years since. So I'm curious to go back to it.
It'll be interesting to see. And I also need him to put Jackson on blast next week for something he let me get away with that he really should not have.
I was trying to bury it. I was trying to keep you safe, Sean. I was trying to let it slide.
I prefer accuracy, though. I would rather be embarrassed for the sake of accuracy.
And when the truth finally dawns, it dawns in fire.
If you're watching this on Jackson's YouTube channel, you should also like, comment, subscribe. And I can't believe I said that. I want to die inside.
It hurts, Ness.
All right, spoilers.
Spoilers. Let's crack open this one like a cold one with the boys, with the happy trigger horny boys.
Hell yeah. So this is a movie that I feel like is kind of hard to unpack because basically every idea and theme kind of plays into one another. And so to start at one point is a little tricky, but I have a proposition.
All right, lay it on me.
Let's work backwards.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the opening of this movie, it doesn't show its hand very, very much. So yeah, maybe starting backwards is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's talk about we can talk about the opening for a hot second here because the opening is going to be very quick and easy and dirty. In that the first 15 minutes, 30 minutes doesn't really matter. Like, it's all very much it matters. It matters quite a bit in the grand scheme of things, but in terms of thematic analysis, it does a lot more to kind of make it feel like a traditional war movie rather than the satire it turns into.
It's all played very straight, and like you're intentionally kept in the dark on what's actually going on, so there is a little bit of feeling that like, oh, maybe this movie is going to be about a war with Russia, which it's not.
Yeah, I mean, like, there is a little bit of indication that something is up because they have Peter Sellers in it, and while he was not at the time Jacques Cousteau, the Pink Panther yet, I have to imagine that at that point he is already a fairly established comedic actor, or at least recognizable as someone who is here to do funny things.
He does, like, I wasn't really super familiar with him. He does look kind of out of place and kind of like exactly like Clouseau at the beginning when you first see him in the army base.
Which, I mean, is important because it sets the idea that this is not going to be traditional despite what you are about to see for the next 30 minutes. Yeah. I would say it doesn't really open up until we get to the war room in general. Yeah, because that's when shit, like, really starts hitting the fan. You get more of a complete picture on what exactly is going on and why, and the why. So let's work from the end now, which is calling America basically Nazis.
Yeah, or at least like suppressing Nazi tendencies, very, very thinly. This is actually where it's such a good bit, but like I was reeling for multiple reasons when Strangelove, the title character, who for most of the movie is pretty unimportant,
also not there for like the first 45 minutes. I remember I watched this for the second time with Sam, and at one point like I paused the movie because we got food, and she's like, "So who's Strangelove? Why is it called this?" I'm like, "Oh, you haven't met him." And then I looked at it, I'm like, "Oh, this has been like 40 minutes. That's interesting."
He's really only important in like 2 scenes, and one of them's at the end where he has a Hitler arm.
Yep.
like it's so unreal that this is where Hideo Kojima clearly took the iconography of like Revolver Ocelot wrestling with the dead clone arm, except it's actually because of course it is in the actual context, it's actually about like subtly, like, not so subtly brimming with like fascist rage.
And I mean, like, that is what his character is. Like, when you first see Strangelove, you watch him roll out because he's in a wheelchair. Like, it looks like he is just sitting along with everyone else. And then he, backs out and, oh, look, he's in a wheelchair. We find out that he's German. And, like, there's a quick line of, like, a Kraut by any other name because he's taken from the, Liebenstrongen or something like that. It was a little translation of Strangelove, I believe. And, already you're kind of getting that, like, interesting. He's still a Nazi, but now he's just American. And so, like, there's some of that set up already, but, like, the initial reaction is, okay, yes, the idea is that Nazi Germany has been crippled at this point. They are no longer a superpower. This is post-World War II, where they are kind of in the muck and the mire for their past actions. Rightfully so. And so, for a while there, Strangelove continues to be in his wheelchair until, like, right before the movie ends, where he stands up and shouts at the president, "Mein Führer, I can walk, my legs work." Which is the most damning thing in this movie, and I was fucking blown away by it. I'm like, holy shit, what a condemnation in the last 10 seconds of the movie.
It's while he's just to make sure we don't forget this lovely little detail. It's while he's proposing a eugenics plan to the president, who was like nodding along like solemnly.
But 10 women to every one man.
10 women to every one man. And that's where General. God, I almost called him General Rildo. That's a fucking Dragon Ball GT character. Whatever the fuck the general's name is. Turgiton, yeah. What I really love, I think my favorite part of this whole sequence is when, like, at first, like, Turgiton's like nodding along, he's like, the women, you say, yeah, and nodding along, but then, like, he launches into, it was just the perfect cap to the movie before the doomsday machine is set off and everyone fucking dies in a glorious montage of nuclear weaponry. It's when he's like, but Mr. President, like the Russians, they're gonna live like mole men under the ground too, and if we don't have net weapons ready when they emerge, they're gonna wipe us off the face of the planet. We gotta spend the next 100 years getting ready, and just immediately, like, no, like, time is not even a second of this new world order has passed where he's back at it again on his Cold War, like, mutually assured destruction bullshit, and then everyone
what do they call it? The mine shaft gap?
Yeah. Yes. God, I'm glad that you watched it twice, because the specific wording of everything in this movie is so great, but, like, since I only watched it once, I can't remember it.
Oh, man. The second time I was watching, like, every line of dialogue is so fucking memorable. I found myself, like, mouthing along to him, like, I've seen this movie twice before, and once was like 6 years ago. This movie is impeccable. That said, we are still getting Thurston, whatever the fuck his name, wrong. And I want to talk about that for a second, because it doesn't fucking matter, and that's part of the point. we've already established that these war men are basically horny kids, and they are just basically continually trying to one-up each other.
Blow their nuclear payload all over their opponent.
That's the sexuality of it coming out.
Yeah.
But like, I want to look at this from the fact that they are basically kids on the playground who are basically going like, yeah, well, you have nukes, but I have a doomsday device that can do this, 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 and this, and it's got thorium G on it. And everything that they say, literally everything in this movie is fucking made up words. And like, it's designed to just be things that people will say, like Thurgeston, Burbleson, thorium G or whatever. None of these things are real. They sound like names that kids came up on the playground, like Burbleson Air Force Base. What the fuck is that? That's nothing. Like, it's all designed to just have very much the idea of kids on the playground slowly one-upping each other and like making up things and new facts as they go along.
I've only been using 2% of my power level.
Exactly. It's wonderful. It is so infantilizing of all of these people, and not in like the sexy way, much more in like the, you're a fucking child and you have the nuclear codes.
Oh my god, like, yeah, I mean, not even the president's mute. I think one of my favorite sequences in the whole movie, low key, is when he's talking to the Russian premier on the phone, and they're like, he's trying to explain the whole situation to him. It's like, I'm very happy too. Like, this is a happy phone call, except it's not. Well, I'm sorry. I'm just as sorry as you are, Russian premier. Like, you can't be more sorry than me. Like even then, they're still trying to one-up each other in this kind of, like, politeness judo sort of way.
Which you can take that phone call in one of two ways. You can absolutely read it as Jackson is, which is to say it's like a politeness judo, and it entirely is, but it's also very easily read as the president is the parent in the room, because that sounds like something that you would get in, say, A Christmas Story, when they call after the kid said fuck, and he's like, oh, I heard this from your child, and I know this is something that you don't want to hear, and yada yada yada. It sounds like a phone call that would be directly from A Christmas Story, and it's just very much embodying that like 1960s I have to call someone else's parent because our children did something wrong vibe to it.
It totally does. I also just love when the president gets exasperated. And it's just like, well, I don't know. I guess you're just gonna have to shoot our boys down. You can do it. You got the whole Air Force. Like he's basically just like throwing up his hands and giving up. Also, kind of some exasperated parents vibes. Like, I don't know. You give them a timeout at recess. No more lunch money for them.
Yeah, everything about this movie. It's incredible how all the lines of dialogue feel both very grounded in war, but also can easily be read as children's dialogue on the playground or a parent's dialogue. It's such an incredible tightrope to walk where like you can feel like a stiff breeze would blow them either way, but it doesn't. It manages to feel like both simultaneously depending on how you're watching it. Because my first time watching through, I didn't pick up on any of this. Again, I was a stupid freshman in college, but like watching it even the second time when I was watching it for the first time yesterday, it felt very much, I'm like, I feel like there's more going on here, but I'm missing some of it. And then watching it the third time, everything was snapped into like sharp focus of, oh my God, I'm seeing the double speak in everything that they are saying, and it is brilliant.
I also, not to discredit anything that you're saying, but can we talk about the fact that General Ripper is just Alex Jones?
We can. I have one last thing that I want to point out, mostly because it is one of my favorite scenes and does a very nice job of just driving my point home. Thurgeston, when they're letting the Russian ambassador into the room, bundles up all of his stuff and holds it together and starts yelling about the big board, and he's gonna see the big board, which is just such a fucking like childish, oh, it's my secrets, you can't let them see, they're going to win, they're going to cheat type of vibe to it that is absolutely wonderful. Nuclear war has basically been initialized. At this point, it doesn't fucking matter, but the childish implication of still bundling up their secrets and the line delivery of he's going to see the big board is so good, and that is word for word. He is going to see the big board, not the war room, not the war plans. He is going to see the big board. Also, "There is no fighting in the war room" is just a beautiful line.
Iconic line even. Yeah, no, that's God, that's so good. And even that gets to like, the pretext that we have of, having like a polite war, like rules of engagement, like a polite mass murder.
Only 2 million people. This is way better. It's a 90% success rate. Only 2 million people will die, down from 20 million if we don't take this action. A polite war.
It's a very polite war. It's very rational.
God, I fucking love this movie so goddamn much. Holy shit. Sorry, you can talk about Alex Jones now.
Well, it's so funny because this movie was not at all what I expected it to be. Like just while I was thinking about it, I was expecting this to be more just from like the title and like seeing Strangelove's like wacky mad scientist Nazi look on the cover. Like I was expecting this to be a little bit more like Bondian, if you know what I mean. I don't really know how. I thought maybe something closer to like almost like proto Kingsman, like some ridiculous like goofs, maybe almost like Naked Gun. But I was not expecting like a straightforward war movie, but with Professor Skimble Tonks. I was not prepared for that, and it was beautiful. But
I can't believe you just called him a cat's name. Skimble Shanks, the war room cat. He's the cat of the war room.
What have I
done? You've just conflated two very different properties in perhaps one of the most cursed ways possible.
Oh no. God, does General Ripper even matter at this point? Does Alex Jones even matter? Of course he does.
He matters very much, yes.
So like the man with the plan. And when you find out what his motivation is, it's the way that it's played, the dynamic between him and Mandrake, Peter Sellers, one of Peter Sellers' many characters.
Another very sexually laden name. A lot of these names are very sexual underneath.
Sean, as Sigmund Freud famously said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, especially when you're constantly chomping on it in close-up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. This movie is not horny at all.
I remember just like the feeling, the look on my face. Like it was a very complicated emotion when General Ripper starts giving a spiel about the purity of like human liquids. For one, I was reminded of this guy who like accosted me on the subway and like racistly said that our mutual Asian friend had residual chi lingering about.
My God, my bones just left my body. I forget about that all the time, and it is horrible.
So I like that whole speech that General Ripper gives. It has like drunk guy on the subway talking about residual chi vibes. Furthermore, like. And when after that initial like shock wears off and he starts talking about like the fluoride in the water, we're still doing this. We're still doing this. Alex Jones is still one of the most like popular radio figures ever. We're still doing this.
The fluoride in the water, it's turning the frickin' frogs gay.
Except it's turning us all to communists because they never drink water.
They drink vodka. But
I'm
not
like,
Ripper only drinks distilled water or rainwater and grain alcohol.
I mean, like, it's so funny because, like, as over the top as it is, maybe the fact that, like, I've heard monologues like Subway Guy talking about things like this, but, like, this... It might be the least over-the-top preposterous thing in the movie because there are so many people who believe shit like this.
It is very, very real, and it is very, very weird. Like, the fact that this scene is very much grounded in things that are still going on today, and that is horrifying. This sounds like a fucking joke back then, but, like, then you think about it and the fact that Alex Jones is still peddling this bullshit, and people are still believing it. Like, there are people who would willingly drop nukes if they thought it would stop turning the freaking frogs gay.
and Alex Jones, like, he peddles his own like water that isn't full of like fluorides and his own like supplements to make you more of a man. Like, oh my god, like the I think the line in the movie that made me crack up the most was like, God, I forgot to look up the exact wording on it, but it was so perfect when he looked at Mandrake and he's like, I had this revelation after an encounter of love.
Oh,
like,
it's something along the lines of like, while I was in the physical act of love, and I found myself drained from it. And I thought about why, and I was trying to figure it out, and thankfully I drew the correct conclusions. And those conclusions were that women are sapping my essence, and I have a very strong essence, and so women continue to want to take my essence, but I do not let them. I abstain from women. Not because I can't have them, but because I choose to, because my essence is my own.
My man just got too much residual chi built up. Oh my god.
Women are coming for his sperm. The crux of it is that women are coming for his sperm, and that is the most Alex Jones boistering I have ever heard. Boistering isn't a word. What the fuck am I trying to say? Boisterous? I try to combine like posturing and boisterousness. Boistering.
It's a word now.
I mean, it is what it is. It's posturing and boisterousness. It's boistering.
Oh my god.
It also sounds like a crime.
It does sound like a crime, like a white collar crime, like something that would happen in an office.
Yeah.
And we caught him on 3 counts of boistering. These white collar workers, they're taking all our money. They're taking from the proletariat. Eat the rich.
It's the fluoridization again. Which I do need to talk about fluoridization as a term, because once again, watching this with Sam, she did think it involved Florida.
Man, you're just gonna call her out like that, huh?
I am, mostly because I thought it was very funny.
Putting her on blast.
Listen, the truth of the matter is that she's in like a grad program to become like get a master's degree and stuff like that, and I'm a dum-dum with the podcast. So like the truth of the matter is that she's clearly the smarter one in this relationship, but I am gonna call her out for thinking fluoridization involved Florida.
I mean, it's like this is swiftly becoming my favorite analogy. It's like Tien and Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z Bridge, where Tien just constantly antagonizes him, knowing that Vegeta could evaporate him at any moment. but if Vegeta does, then he loses, and he knows it. It's the perfect symbiosis, really.
Love you, babe.
Oh my god.
Christ. Yeah. So I mean, that's basically Dr. Strangelove. It's brilliant in every way, shape, and form. And I mean, like, this conversation even still has been incredibly surface level. Like, we haven't even really begun to delve into everything else that goes on with it. Like, there's multitudes of things that we can cite. It's right now mostly just talking surface level things that we really, really liked. And I mean, for surface level, there's a lot to really, really like.
Yeah, I mean, I actually always find it somewhat challenging to talk about these kind of movies where there's a lot going on. Like in something like Citizen Kane, for example. Not to knock Citizen Kane. I really, really love that movie. But like, because you can kind of so easily sum up the theme as like big man fall from grace. It's almost easier for me to talk about the areas where it executes on that theme, or maybe areas where it diverges from it or explores it with more nuance than other movies, but it's all coming back to that central point. But this is a movie where like a lot is happening, both literally in terms of the screenplay and like thematically. So it's harder to have a grand thesis on this one without actually like going back into the study and again, I've only watched it once and really writing a dissertation on it, because you totally could, and I'm sure that people have.
I mean, like, that's the problem with this podcast as a medium, is I think that we do end up with some very interesting thematic discussion, but we're coming off of a few viewings at most, and like, we're very free-balling with all of this stuff. We're not wearing underwear, and we're just kind of lightly talking about how, you know, this thing happened here and this happened here, and they relate to form this overall theme. But, like, we don't have, you know, documents in front of us with a script talking about the various levels in which they interact, which is what this movie really deserves.
It also deserves for you to watch it if you think that there's no joy to be had from some old black and white Cold War movie. You're dead wrong, and you would probably gonna be surprised at how sadly relevant it remains.
Like, you want the final nail in the coffin, because this is. I've said this is my favorite part about everything in this movie. This might just be becoming my favorite movie if we're being honest with ourselves for a minute here. But one of my favorite parts, one of the most real parts, as we're sitting in this crashing economy due to coronavirus, and the concern is not for the loss of life, but for the economy and what might happen to our beautiful, beautiful stonks as they plummet, and the billionaires and the private companies. The Coke machine? The Coke machine.
I knew we were forgetting something important.
It's literally this scene that takes place for like 30 seconds. It never comes back, but it is so poignant as fucking Peter Sellers' Mandrake is like, I need money for this machine. There are lives at stake. The world is facing global nuclear annihilation. Shoot that Coke machine. Get me some money. And he's like, the guy that's currently... The setup for it, I can't even get into. There's a lot happening to get to this point. But he's like, sir, that's a privately owned thing. I can't shoot that. The Coke... If this doesn't work... The Coke machine is going to come after you. The Coca-Cola company will have your head. And I'm like, oh, it's too real.
It's such a minor point in the overall movie, but it's such a fucking chilling one. Jesus Christ.
It's just far too real with the lives that we are experiencing today. And I mean, it ends with the fucking slapstick as the dude getting sprayed in the face with Coke. Ha 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 ha. Is that an ill portend? Oh my god, am I reading too much into the slapstick joke? Because I might be, but also, oh no.
Sean, we're all getting sprayed in the face with Coke every day. You can relax.
Is there anything else that we want to talk about with this movie? I realize that right now we're running a bit ahead of schedule, which is wild, because like this is a movie that we should just be pouring over and diving into in every way, shape, and form. But
I have another theory for why this one might be a little more difficult to talk about, if I may.
Absolutely.
A pretty simple one, actually, and that it's also, unlike Kane and unlike Casablanca, this is a comedy. And like I am loath to like... I think one of the things that makes good comedy so good is that the jokes are not only funny, but you understand why they're funny and what we're goofing on. So analyzing a comedy basically comes down to explaining the joke, and I think I just have like a visceral urge against that.
I mean, yeah, it does kind of ruin a lot of the movie. I think that there's a lot of kind of nuance to the jokes. I mean, even with the Coca-Cola machine, like that kind of sounds like a joke until you kind of replace it within real life and you realize what it's trying to say. And like there's a lot of things to this movie that do read as jokes, and we are functionally explaining the joke, but like they're jokes that work on two levels.
Oh, they most certainly do. I'm not saying this is like my like platonic ideal of what a comedy should be, and that it's both funny and it's smart and it's got themes and it's got things to say. But I think because it's funny, I'm sort of weird about spoilers. I mostly don't care. Like I knew who died in the Red Wedding before I saw a single episode of Game of Thrones, and like that didn't hamper my experience of that show at all. So for like a drama, it doesn't matter to me so much. But like so much of comedy like relies on surprise that I think that it's just harder for me to go whole hog, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, like, we could sit here and we could talk about Thurgerson's rant when they're asking, like, oh, could the single plane get in there and create this catastrophe? And he goes off and, like, starts acting like a kid, describing the plane that he saw going overhead and just really excitedly about how great their pilots are and yada, 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 yada. And, like, we can explain that it's a joke that works on the level of, hey, you know, haha, he's acting like a kid in the war room. Look at him being immature and dumb. And then we can dive into explaining why that relates to everything else going on in the movie. But, like, does that enhance your enjoyment of the movie at that point? Like, we've given a good broad stroke of it, and I think as long as we kind of explain the broad strokes of the movie, you'll get more out of it going back to it and watching it again with a different viewing point of it without us explaining every one of the jokes.
Yeah, because I think, like, this is where maybe we're starting to get into, like, what is the function of criticism? And is the function of criticism to just, like, explain the movie? Well, like, not really, because oftentimes there are different interpretations of a movie. And I think when a movie is so on point like this, it becomes harder to feel like I'm not just trying to explain the movie, or in this case, explain the joke.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing, too, is that this isn't, what we do in this podcast generally isn't really criticism. Like, I want to dive into that mostly because I dabble in both criticism and analysis, where you tend to dabble more in the just analytical side of things, barring the opening of every episode where we kind of give a slight critical review of the movie. And so, like, this is far more an analytical side of thing, which I think is where, like, those jokes and ideas end up, like, just falling flat. Like, when you dissect them so much that someone goes and watches it, I feel like the punchiness of it is robbed. A critical perspective of this would be like, this is a very good movie. Here are the themes. Go watch it.
I think analysis can be argued to be a pretty big, like, branch of criticism in its own right. But I see what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. Analysis involves criticism in a lot of ways, but I feel like just because, mostly I think this is coming from me being like, critics have a bad rap because so many people are like, you're just telling me what to think, blah, 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 blah.
No, I get you.
Like, that's more what I'm saying, because as someone who does write critical reviews of movies and not just an analytical reviews, which does involve criticism. As I said, even in this podcast, you do embrace criticism in the beginning, and, like, then that bleeds into your analyticals of it. There's a distinction that needs to be made, at least I think for me, to kind of explain how this works. Is that, I'm not trying to, like, tread on toes here. I'm just,
no,
it's something that, like, hits me in a weird way.
Oh, I actually have an exciting announcement. Apropos of nothing. I forgot to mention this during the pre-discussion. I have been permanently banned from our movie.
Oh shit!
Probably just because I was advertising the show on there too much, and they don't like that. But I'm just reminded of that one exchange that I had on our movies. That, like, I should. I think I posted it in the Horsecast Discord of that one chuckle fuck on our Hunt episode. The only comedy left. It was the most depressing comment in the world. Was, I can't wait to not watch this, go see the movie, and form my own opinion. And I got so mad about it. I literally rage commented at him back and said, no one is telling you can't do that, but by all means feel free to posture about it. I was so angry about that comment. So the fact that people are like, their critics tell me what to think, I know like that, they're basically fascists. Oh, that drives me insane. So what I'm saying is good on you for taking a stand.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, I do critical work in that way. And so, like, I very much have my foot in, like, I need to say something about this, because otherwise, you know, I feel bad about myself.
Go watch Dr. Strangelove, everybody. It's a perfect movie.
Yeah, it genuinely might be one of my new favorite movies. I mean, honestly, if it's not clear by now, I have basically become a full-on Kubrick stan. Absolutely a madman of a director, and I love him so much.
We'll be able to rebuild him. We'll make him stronger. We'll make him
Jackson,
a centaur.
You can't do this again. You can't do this again. You tried it once, and it killed the fucking momentum. We can't do it again.
Sean, I have a better idea. It's the same thing, but better. Instead of taking just his head, we'll take his entire body. So he still has his hands to work with, but he has horse legs. So he can direct, like, high-speed, thrilling shots, holding the camera on his own without the need for extra equipment. It'll be revolutionary. Centaur-filled.
Question again. What am I supposed to do with that? Where am I supposed to go from there?
Well, you're supposed to go to the graveyard and start digging.
Oh, Christ, man, I've been Sean McKinda. I mean, if you want to follow me on social media, that's at Sean_McKinda on Twitter. I feel like you have no desire to anymore, and I understand that one completely. My letterbox is Sean McKinda. I post occasional little things about, hey, this is a movie I watched. Here's my quick thoughts on it. I watch a bunch of movies over the weekend, so you should check that out if you want.
And I've been Jackson Keller. You can find me on twitch.tv/JacksonJKeller, where I'll be streaming Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. So if you're not a patron, that's your opportunity to get a sneak peek on my half of the bonus episode, because you'll be getting my thoughts in real time. Because if I don't stream that game, I'm not gonna be able to muster the will to play it, probably. That's
an ill portent.
It's funny because it's not even like the idea of the game sounds like so bad to me or anything. It's just this is by far the longest work that we've ever had to prepare for on the Horsecast. Like, this would be like asking me to watch all of, like, every single episode of The Simpsons or something. Like, we're gonna review every episode of the fucking Simpsons in one episode. That's the time effort involved. So I gotta find some way to get me off my ass to do it, because I will play long ass RPGs, but if I'm asked to play a long ass RPG, I'm gonna be like a child, like a Dr. Strangelove character, and go, no, I won't.
Your YouTube channel?
Oh, yeah, duh. So I'm on YouTube. If you're not listening from YouTube, it's just my name. It's just Jackson Keller. I wish I had, like, a perma URL, but I'm part of the YouTube underclass right now, so I don't have access to that.
If you want to get in contact with the podcast and tell us that our weird, homunculus Kubrick horse bits are bad and weird, you can follow us on Twitter at BADH_cast. Honestly, we don't go on there super often, just mostly just to be like, hey, new episode, check it out. But if you do want to get in contact with, the best place to do that is on our Discord. And the best place to get access to that, and in fact, the only place to get access to that, is over on patreon.com/BADHcast. At only $1 a month, that gets you access to our Discord. $5 a month gets you access to our Discord and our backlog of bonus episodes, where we're going to be posting that Ni no Kuni episode in a little bit here, and a bunch of really, really good episodes. $10 a month gets you access to all our backlog, our Discord, and the ability to request bonus episodes. If you want us to talk about something in particular, that's how you do it. It also gives you a little something.
Thank you so much, Julia, Travis, Pat, Mom, Summer. Y'all are great. Y'all are wonderful. Thanks for supporting the homies.
And thank you to Lords of the Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate takeoff them, high octane, low expectations. They're a wonderful band. You should go check them out wherever you can. They're probably not going to be doing live shows right now, but you know what? When they are again, go watch them live. Go stream their music. Go buy their music. Whatever you got to do, support them however you can. Also, thanks to 25 Years Later Site.com. We're a little button in their corner of their website. Don't worry about that. But you should also go check out, see what's going on over that website. There's a bunch of really talented people doing a bunch of really talented writing. I am on staff in some capacity, guaranteed. I do their audio editing, and I've written some articles over there as well. But there's more people talented more than me. That was not a sentence. Pretend it was. And if you pretend it was, that's what they write like. They write goodly. I talk badly. They got a bunch of really interesting stuff over there, from news, interviews, reviews, analysis, and everything else. Please go read that stuff. Next week, we're going to be talking about Easy Rider. I have never seen it. Jackson has. Does it hold up for him? Who knows?
This is going to be an interesting one. That's all I can say with any sort of confidence.
Find out. Bye. Don't you go.
around. Don't you go.